So I'm going to introduce Dave Steele from Western Wealth Capital next. So Dave is one of the principals, and he is also notable for, at one point in his life, being the second most eligible bachelor in Canada, behind Wayne Gretzky. And he was you were in front of Brian Adams, right? Yeah. So I can. So, without further ado, admire the beauty. How are you?
First of all, a great honor to be here. Thank you, and thank you first of all to a whole bunch of you that have invested with us over the last couple of years, and great results, and we'll talk about that today. Before we get started, I'd like to, you guys all know Tim, so say hi, Tim. But we also have John Riles here who's going to spend the day with us, and I really would encourage you to get some time with John. John is our Executive Vice President. Before he joined us about a year ago, he was one of the managing directors of Greystar. Greystar is the largest multifamily owner in the United States, 225,000 units, and John oversaw a big part of the western U.S., where his portfolio oversaw 32,000 units. So he knows just about everything that you would want to know about investing in real estate. So I would really encourage you to get a few minutes and just, everybody likes to go deeper in different areas. If that's an area that appeals to you, John's going to be with us all day, including on the bus. So definitely get some time with John. Maybe just raise your hand, John, so everyone can see you. So we're really going to start today talking about why we're all here, right? We're really here because we're all thinking about, hey, how much money do I need? What am I going to invest it in? And how am I going to make sure that I have money for retirement, right? Because it all looks good. And this one is, my dream when I retire with my savings is living on a small island somewhere. Now, if you're not specific about that goal, here's where you might end up. It's the same goal, it just ended up a little bit different. I started out with nothing, and I still have most of it, which is fairly common. They did a survey about 10 years ago, and they asked people, where are you going to get your money to retire? And 3 out of 10 people, their response was winning a lottery, right? Just to give you an idea of what the planning was. And I like this one. I won $2 in the Mega Millions. Please respect our privacy as our family decides how to move forward in this exciting middle time. And the other one is, I always knew I'd get old. How fast it happened was a bit of a surprise. So it does kind of creep up. And then the other reason is that I think, ultimately we all want to control more of how much we work and whether we're able to work again. Tomorrow's Monday again. I don't think I can do this every week, right? How do you get more control so you're more control of what you're doing? And we've had some great success. I'm going to talk a little bit about Western Wealth, but we've had some great success being very specific about buying real estate and working with investors to be able to do that. Just a little snapshot. We bought 68 properties. We closed three yesterday to get us to 68. Well, almost 15,000 units, $1.4 billion in acquisitions, and $500 million worth of equity. Now, what's impressive to me about the equity is that it's come not in big numbers. We have one group that's given us $100 million, which is a huge number, but most of the money has come from individual investors that have invested anywhere between $25,000 and $500,000 a deal, right? So I can't tell you the number of people that have come in and said, Dave, I really like this, and after I thought I gave the presentation of a lifetime, they gave me $25,000. And at the beginning, I used to think, geez, I thought my presentation was better than that. But what I found out is people put $25,000 or $50,000 into the first deal or two, and then they watch it, and they pay attention to the numbers, and they look at their portal, and they see the reporting every single month. And then, we have a gentleman who on his third deal, he did 25, 25, 250,000, and 500,000. So the formula of being able to just try it and see how it works, really works well. So the result of that was, out of the 68 properties that we've acquired, we've sold them. You can see on the right-hand side, the average hold period on those was 30 months, and the investor's annualized return was 30%. So after all fees and expenses and splits, the investors took home an average annualized return on those deals, right? Now, Now, I will tell you that if anybody tells you this is easy, don't believe it. What I think you'll see today is you'll see today what we do that takes a lot of the risk out of doing this. And that's really why we do these tours, because you're going to get to see firsthand how the process works and exactly what we do to the buildings, and just how repeatable it is, exactly what we do. So the starting point of this, if you really look at it, is we look at the top of the funnel. And the first thing at the top of the funnel is what is the supply and demand? This is an interesting stat that just came out. The United States needs 4.6 million new apartment units between now and the year 2030. And if you look at it, this is the construction rate, and this is the new apartments needed, and they're way behind in being able to deliver the number of new apartments to keep that demand, right? Now, just so we're clear, this doesn't universally mean that every city in the United States, you should be pouring your money in to buy apartments in those markets. What you need to do is, where's the demand, where are the people moving to? And I'll share our methodology of what we believe, because we're very specific on about 14 different markets that we go after. So, because where there's an imbalance, where there's more people moving to, that means where there's jobs being created, there's more need for beds. Those people are moving there and they need a place to stay. They need a pillow to put their head down every single night. We want to go in and find accommodation for them. We know there's more people moving there. And when that supply hits, generally the rental rates go up. That's really as simple as it gets in our model. And so we look for where there's an imbalance. We look for the top markets in job and population growth. And then we really target where the top employers are moving to. And, someone said to me, well, Dave, if I wanted to do this, what would I do? I say, you do what probably 80% of our investors do. It's called TTCG. There's this thing called Google. And you just go home and you type in and you go, where's the top population growth city? Where are they all? So if you look at it, the cities that we really like, Dallas, Houston, Atlanta, Phoenix, right? Kind of no real surprise. You guys have all seen our opportunities coming from those markets. And the top population growth, again, they fit in those markets. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the ones further down that you don't see opportunities for us, sort of the why that you don't see them. So this would be a typical example of Dallas. It kind of meets all the criteria. 7 million population, super low unemployment rate, lots of big Fortune 500 companies moving here. Median income, $72,000. So again, I'll talk to you about why that is. So number one in the U.S. where people are moving. Number two, driver of job growth in the U.S. Number three, highest concentration of Fortune 500 companies in the U.S. So those are terrific parameters for our model, right? So now what we do is we go, okay, that city fits the parameters. Now we go hunting for exactly the type of properties that we look for, which I'll talk about. Same thing, here's Houston. Another one we drive is the number one U-Haul destination. It's a big driver for us. U-Haul publishes the statistics. Number one U-Haul destination, fourth largest population in the U.S., and the largest medical complex in the world. So, right around MD Anderson, they're building another facility. It's, over $5 billion. It's going to employ 70,000 new people. So again, you look for that where there's going to be just a stream of people moving for the next, the next decade. It's going to be very strong. And Phoenix, right? Phoenix has been the fastest growing economy, number three, number two for job growth, and the fastest growing city in the U.S. So again, and so the result is if you get more people moving in, you're ultimately going to have more demand. When you have more demand, now we start to look and see, okay, that market should give us good rental increases, right? And then we drive the affordability matrix. And many of you have seen the presentation, so you've seen this. But again, if you go on cnnmoney.com, you can punch in any city in the world, and you punch in, if I live in San Francisco and I make $150,000. And by the way, if I live in San Francisco and I make $150,000, my average rent in San Francisco is about $4,200 a month for a two-bedroom. Okay? So when we go and buy a building in Houston, Dallas, Phoenix, Atlanta, the rent's for $800 a month. We're doing exactly the same thing these big companies are doing. They're sitting there going, I need to go hire 100 or 200 people. If I can hire them in another one of these cities, I can pay them much less. It's much more affordable, and it's much easier. Even if it's not cheaper, it's easier for me to attract the talent because people can move to that city and actually put money in their pocket. So So what we're really seeing is we're seeing people moving to these cities to be able to put money in their pocket. So, dollar for dollar, I can make about $80,000 in Houston, about 76 against 150, and in Phoenix, 73%. So the metric we drive is, in the United States, in LA, San Fran, and Miami, people are spending 42 to 45% of their income on housing. Now the challenge with that is those markets become harder to get rent increases because you're already taking a pretty sizable chunk of people's disposable income that they're spending on housing. So when you say I want to get an increase on my rent, it's much harder in a market like this. So we look for markets like this. Houston, 27% of your income. Phoenix, 28%. Dallas, 30%. So this is the affordability matrix that we really look to say, that's another sign for us that, hey, there's a good macro market. So we get the macro market, and then we also look and go, we don't like markets with rent control. We like the land of the free, home of the brave. When we put our rental increases in, when we renovate the buildings, we like to be able to get rent control. So that's the macro, right? So if you really look at it, you could go and do that in every city. You could do it in your own hometown and say, should I be investing here? And the other reason we believe this is that most of these markets, even if I didn't say they're in the top 5 and I said let's not debate that, let's say they're in the top 10, if you get any kind of a market correction, your safety of being in these markets is much better. They might go from a top 10 market to a top 15 market, but if you're investing in one of their headquarters to Dallas, that's these are all things that in that region of Arlington would be very attractive to us. We like being near airports. A huge side benefit, just to give you a little sidetrack, but a huge side benefit of being near an airport is you have one completely new level of screening tenants. For people to get screened to work at an airport, there's one level of screening that they go through, which generally gives you better tenants. So if we can find properties near airports, that's also really good for us, right? Because they've got to go through all these. They're not as likely to move in and 3 months later skip out on their rent because they're generally not that kind of people. And then universities nearby. So those are sort of the more micro things that we look at. And now what we're really seeing, and this is kind of, I don't know if we've gone through this, but this is actually a big change that's happening. That's happening in our industry, and I'll just talk about it for a second. So, as Buck said, mathematically, you take the income of the building, and you take the income over the cap rate, and that gets you the value of the building. So the income, there's 2 ways you can do that. You can renovate the units and increase the rent. You can take units in the building that are below market, and you can move them up to market, and that increases the income. You can decrease your expenses. So there's all the different things you can move on the income. Now, the biggest thing that's going to move, in our opinion, I'll talk about in a second, is the cap rate. So who knows what a cap rate is? Raise your hands up just so I get a rough percentage. Okay, so for those of you that don't know what a cap rate, there's the very long kind of technical. What it means is if I went and I bought a building for $10 million and it had a 10% cap rate, that means that before making a mortgage payment, if I paid cash for that building, after my operating expenses, I would make 10% on my money. So all it says is, take the financing out of it. If all I did was buy the building at a cap rate, and I paid full price, cash for the building, and it made me 10% a year, and I didn't have financing on it, that would be a 10 cap rate. So what's happening is that if interest rates fall, what happens with cap rates? They fall. Who said that? Point in the back. Yeah, so if interest rates fall, cap rates fall, right? What's your sense, and where do you believe interest rates are going over the next 1 year, 2 years, 5 years? You're free to say I have no idea, because I'm not sure anyone really does.
They'll go down.
Right. And I'll show you the world context. In the world context, our interest rates are really high right now. I'm going to show you that in a second. But the short answer is most of the buildings we buy, for easy math, are at a 5 cap. So if at the end of the day, if you paid cash for the building, you earn 5% on your money. You're borrowing that money at 3.5%. So on the 75% of the building, you're making 1.5% on that money because you've got a difference between the cap rate and on what you borrowed. So that's why you get that extra cash flow. And on your equity part, you're making 5%, plus you're making the difference between what the borrowing is. But and so when you go to sell that building sells at a 5 cap. Now, if interest rates were to fall, and that spread between the cap rate and the interest rate is typically 1.5%. So if you believe that interest rates are going to fall by 1 or 1.5% from where they are today, that means that cap rate is going to fall down to 3.5%, right? If that cap rate falls to 3.5%, the value of these buildings is going to skyrocket, okay? And I'll show you just some simple math on it. So, again, in our model, it's very simple. We buy a building and we do a Gold Star renovation. And we know on that Gold Star renovation, because we know the submarket. So we take a building, and when we buy the suites you'll see today, they don't look like this inside. They've got old carpet in them, they've got old appliances. We go and we put in stainless steel appliances and hardwood floor, and we do exactly the same thing with every unit. We literally do almost exactly the same renovation in every building in every city. So that gets us $125 a month. Times 12 months, and let's say it's a 300-unit building and we do 200 of them. So if we do 200 of the units, that means that we're going to get, by the time it takes us to do those 200 units, that building's going to give us $300,000 of additional income. And if we put a washer dryer in, we're going to get $40 a month. So 40 times 12 times 200 is $96,000. So of $96,000 at a 5 cap rate, that building goes up by $8 million, right? And our typical model is we generally can drive the income up to get the value to go up over about a 3-year period by almost equal to what the equity we put into the building. So our whole model is how fast can we do this? Because as Buck says, this is just math now. This is just math. We can make this building at a 5 cap worth another $8 million. And again, in most of our models, that's only doing 67% of the Gold Star renovations and 67% of the washer dryers. And when we do more than that, then we can increase the value even more. So now what happens if you change the cap rate? So if you believe that the interest rates are coming down, which I'm going to show you in a second, kind of why I really think we're going to see an environment where rates are coming much lower. That same $96,000 worth of income is now worth almost another $880,000 to us as investors in that building. So as the cap rates fall, that same income becomes valued even less, right? So then I go, oh, that slide didn't put it in the way I wanted. But so if you look at the top, these are the 10-year mortgage rates around the world, okay? At the top in Germany, today if I want to borrow in Germany today, my interest rate is 0.5% on a 10-year mortgage, okay? In France, it's 1.39%, okay? In Japan, it's 0.65. In the UK, it's 0.75. And in the United States, we're at 3.5%, okay? So a lot of people believe we're going to see significant reduction. There's trillions of dollars right now going into bank accounts in Switzerland, where when you put your money in the bank account, you have to pay the bank an interest rate to keep your money in the bank account. They don't pay you an interest rate, you keep your money in the bank account. So what that means is they're sitting on all this money that is doing nothing, and this is crazy, but in Denmark, they just gave a 10-year mortgage, sorry, a 20-year mortgage at minus 0.5% interest rate. So they gave a 30-year mortgage at 0% interest rate. Now, there was an upfront fee to place the mortgage, but once you paid the upfront fee, you got paid minus 0.5% on your mortgage, right? So all I'm saying is when you look at this in the context of the world, and you look at us borrowing today at 3.5%, and you know we're not exactly borrowing up there with the powers of the world. Like Hungary's borrowing at 5%, right? So you know you look at this and you go, there is definitely a pressure, and there's definitely a belief in the real estate world that we're going to see a dramatic reduction in interest rates. And you know, if you ever saw this get down into the 2% range, you're going to see 5 cap buildings trading at 2.5 or 3 caps, right? So at 2.5 or 3 cap, let's say it trades at a 2.5 cap. That means the building you bought today, with the lower interest rate, is worth double what it's worth today. And then you say, well, that doesn't make any sense. Well, sure it does, because if I'm going to put my money in the bank and I have to pay the bank to hold my money, why wouldn't I just go buy a piece of real estate, pay cash for it, just sit on the real estate and earn 2.5%, right? Pretty safe way to earn the rent every month. Tenants aren't going to go away. So I believe that you're going to see a pretty dramatic shift in the values and in the drop in interest rates in this environment that we're going through in the next period of time. What does that mean? It just means there's going to be a lot of money over time coming in, looking to buy it. And we even see it today. When we go to buy a building, because we buy them, and you'll see some today that you sort of see before, the during, and the after. When we go to buy it, we have some competition to buy these. We're not going in as the only buyer. But when we go to sell it, when it's been completely redone, the number of buyers to buy the building is exponential. It's like there's so much money, and they're not coming in trying to get 20% on their money. They're coming in trying to get 8 or 10%. So they look at a building that we've completely fixed up, and they're just in the business of placing a lot of capital. So they just want to place that capital and buy the building, and they're just trying to earn 8 or 10% on their money. So the number of people when you get fully completed buildings is quite big. So I think it's kind of the perfect storm. And so from our perspective, what we're really looking at is the need for speed. And this is the multifamily business, if you will. So if you look at it, this is kind of the industry that we came into. And you would buy a building, and they'd go to the bank, and they'd get the financing, and they'd take over the building. And you know, they would fix the signs up, and that's what they would do. And then what we decided is, if we can renovate 200 units and we can do it in 24 or 30 months instead of 40 months, we're making that same 100%. We're making that same $8 million. But now how do we make that same $8 million and make it go faster? So this is really what we're trying to do. So if you come to one of our company meetings and we sit around and everybody in every area of our company is just they're so crazy about, how do I do this faster? How do I order the signs so that it's there on takeover day? I'll talk about that in a second. And some of you probably saw this when we were marketing the brand. So this is a suite renovation. Buck says, Dave, if you guys could only do it that fast. But so if you think about it, when we started in this 4 or 5 years ago, it would take us 28 days to renovate a suite. We can now do it in 8 or 9 days, right? So I'm going to say last year we did 1,088 units last year. Last month we did 288, right? Now, think of it that if we get, by the time you get a gold star renovation and a washer dryer, and that's $200, in simple math, for every $200 rent increase you get, it's worth about $40,000. So if I said to you, hey, we're invested in this property and we did 6 last month, you go 6 times 40,000, the building went up by 240 grand, right? That's the simple math of our business. If I can now take that 6 and make it 10, that means that building went up by $400,000 a month. Now, you've got to do it seasonally because you can't, you don't want to renovate a whole bunch of units in November to have them ready for December because not many people are moving in December. But in June, July, and August, we renovate units at a pace you can't even imagine because we know whatever we have available on September 1, it's going to be 100% full. So the whole model is, how do we do this and how do we go faster? And many of you have seen the presentations, but most of it is around complete standardization. When we go in, You'll see the signs today. We pick colors, and I'll show you in kind of the timeline of the industry, but we pick colors, we pick signage, we design our leasing offices, we do our pool furniture. Everything is picked the day the deal goes into contract. So we're starting 60, 90 days before we ever close, and we're going at Mach speed because we know that if the day the building is 100% finished, the day you walk into the clubhouse and you go, wow, look at this clubhouse, that's the day I'm not only getting a rent bump for a renovated unit, but I'm getting a rent bump because everybody that walks through wants to rent in that building. So that's really what our focus is. We've gone from a 24-point checklist to a 52-point checklist. So we drive our checklist on every single takeover. And this is a new thing we've implemented is here's all the contracts we now get signed. We used to say, well, we're going to do this and do this. Now it's okay, what contracts are signed so that the painters aren't showing up 90 days after close. They're showing up the first week we own the building and they're starting to paint the building. So this is the same thing. These are our model suites. We have 23 different model suites on the go right now being renovated on properties. Again, standardize it as much as possible. And leasing offices, clubhouses, there's 10 complete, 8 in process, and 3 in queue. So again, you're going to walk into some buildings today that are 1980s clubhouses, and when you walk in, and some of them have just taken over, you're going to walk in and you're going to go, wow, I wouldn't rent here this. But then you'll see some that are finished, and you go, I can't believe how much nicer this property looks. So the key is being able to do that. This is one you're going to see today, this is before, and then you're going to see one today, this is one of the after. So we call it WOW 2.0. This is kind of our mantra for I saw Well 2.0. I love it. But this is really our mantra, and our mantra is, okay, how do we do it faster, right? What do we do? What do we do? Because already in the scheme of what's gone in our industry, we flipped everything in the industry on its head. And so this is the industry that we came into. We came in, and here's put in a letter of intent. Here's our takeover day. And so typically what would happen, somebody would come up with a vision plan, a capital plan, and then when they closed, they would sit down and they'd say, okay, well, what's the marketing plan? What are we going to name the building? And so they'd already own the building, and then they'd say, well, what's our website going to be? And a month after they own the building, they'd set up the website. And then 30, 60 days, they'd say, you know what, we should test doing one of these, we should test doing one of these model suites. And then you'd call the designer in, the designer would say, oh, I really like this beige, and it goes so well with this, and you'd sit there and I'd want to shoot myself, right? Because I'd be like, guys, we're doing the same model suite in every single building. I don't need the designer to tell me beige, right? And so then you'd get suite finishes, and then the pool furniture would arrive 90 days later, and then somewhere in here someone would say, yeah, what are we going to do to the leasing office? And 120 or 150 or 180 days later, they start work on the model suite and they start painting, and somewhere maybe a year and a half down the road, everything's done, right? So we set out and we said, okay, WOW 1.0, how do we start moving this stuff to the left, right? Because we know that the day it's all done, we know the rent increases we're getting, right? And we know that we're actually kind of lucky to be getting rent increases at the time the whole property is in a construction zone, right? So when you look at the first year cash flows of buildings, you think, like we have to coach up the leasing team to be good salespeople because people are coming through and they may not even be in the leasing office. They may be in a suite off to the side because the leasing office is getting better, right? So we started to move all this to the left and said, the more we can get done here, the easier it becomes. And then we went our usual psycho way, and we decided, okay, how do we go to takeover 2.0, and how do we now get as much of this happening? So we use every second of every day in the 90 days that we have it under contract, because the real money is, if I can crunch this timeline, I can get it down to much shorter time. And I think you said it is the speed. The speed is really what we're going to make 100% on our money. If we execute the business plan, big difference if we make that 100% in 2 years than if we make it in 4 years, right? And every time you increase the value of the building. So the bank, when we go to the bank and we borrow the money, we buy a building for say $30 million. They give us a $30 million loan on the day we buy the building. Now, they don't advance us $30 million. They only advance us $20 million. But when we come back at the end of 2 years and we say, hey, the building's gone from 30 million to 37 million, they give us 75% of that increase, and that's the capital we take and we give back to the investors. So that's what really turns the wheel, because now at the end of year 2, you put your $100,000 in, you're getting $50,000 of it back to go put into another deal with us or somewhere else, and you're still continuing to earn your annual return, your annual cash flow of 3, 4, 5%. You're still getting that every year, but you've pulled out half your money. And then at the end of year 3, we refinance it again. At the end of year 4, we refinance it again, with the goal being that by the end of year 4, you've got 100% of your capital out. And with that capital out, you're now able to reinvest that, but you still own this building. So you've got all your money out, the bank's now financed to a higher percent, and at today's rates of 3%, that extra money you borrow hardly moves the needle on the cash flows, because it just doesn't move the needle. So this is what we obsess about every day. This is what really drives. And today I think you'll see it, because you're going to see some various properties that you're going to see in different stages. And our goal is really getting everything rolling. And then the other thing we have, and this is a great part now of the building, so we have 21 or 22 buildings in Phoenix. We've got a new opportunity to come on and show you 3 slides on at the end in Phoenix. But the beauty of this is we know next to the building that we're buying, we know that we're buying this building here. We know the rents on this building right here. So here's the last 8 rents on this building, right? Somebody said to me the other day, they go, wow, so you're taking an $815 unit, you're turning it, you're making it 210, 170, 250, 25, 50, all the way. They said, if this was the stock market, wouldn't that be insider trading? I go, actually, it's kind of true. I mean, that's, if you really think about it, in the real estate business, the benefit we have is we know all the buildings in the markets we're all in now. So it's not, it's not any kind of a guess around if we renovate this unit. We sit down and go, hey, what are the rents going to be? And so the next level, and these are huge money-making. Anybody know what these are? Yeah, these are really great. So when we take over a building, one of the first things we do now is we go in. You see, we've completed 12 of these. There's 17 in progress. But what happens is, typically when we take over a building, if you live in Suite 107 and you order something on Amazon, Amazon delivers the parcel, and they come to the leasing office, and the leasing person at the desk says, yeah, I've got a parcel for 107, and they sign for it, and they take it and they put it behind the desk. And by the end of the day, there's 50 parcels behind the desk, which the property manager really never wanted to take the liability on for it, right? Like, somebody takes one of those parcels, I don't know what happened to it, God knows what people are getting delivered. But so what we do is we go in and we put in this parcel. And in 300 units, the day it goes in, every tenant signs up for it, and they pay, depending on the submarket, they may pay between $6 and $9 per unit. Okay? So at our cap rate, that's $540,000 more of value. Right? So if you look at it, that's crazy, right? That's $27,000 times $200. That's $500,000. So we literally are now, and again, that's why the need for speed is, we're chasing to say, hey, every old property we have, where's it going in? Now the second we take over the building, we're designing it, and we're saying, hey, where can we put this in? Because the day we take over, we're knocking on people's doors saying, hey, and it's easy for the property manager because they say, we're not taking parcels anymore. If you want it, you've got to use the parcel post, right? So it's really good. And I was just at a conference, and they're saying this is the new wave, just to give you an idea. Whole Foods and Amazon and these guys, they're going to hook these on your balcony. This is going to be the next wave of making money in the apartment business, and you're going to have your groceries delivered by a drone. In March of 27, They had the first autonomous drone delivery of a human part that went from one hospital to another hospital. They were worried they couldn't get it through the traffic, so they authorized it and they delivered it by a drone. But they say that Amazon isn't going to be in the warehouse. Amazon's going to be up in the sky. And when you want the parcel, they're going to come down, and on the edge of every balcony in every building, there's going to be an equivalent of a lockbox that's going to slide into the box. It's going to go inside. We haven't figured out what we'll charge you per month for it. I'm very excited about it. I know I should be excited for Amazon. And what their goal is to deliver everything in 1 hour, right? That's ultimately what their goal is. And the other thing they're going to do, this is kind of crazy, they'll know everything about you so well that they'll not only deliver what your parcel is, but they'll look down your profile and they'll say, you know, you look like you could have a nice orange hat to go with your shirt. So they'll deliver you the orange hat, and if you decide after a couple of days you don't want it, the next drone delivery they come back, they'll just pick it up and take it back. But they'll be pre-selecting for you, which kind of made me think of this. My wife asked me why I spoke so softly. I said I was a great partner. She laughed, I laughed. Kind of true, right? So this is our newest opportunity in Phoenix. Again, all the same metrics. I'm not going to go into a long presentation. This will get launched in the way, but near Luke Air Force Base, 4,300 employees. Right next to Banner Health, 15 minutes away, 39,000 employees. Again, purchase price, you know. So the three things that for those of you that invested with us, you know, people say to me, well, Dave, every one of the executive summaries looks the same. And I go, it's literally the same model, the same things we do. We normalize the rents, which the first step is we look and see how much below market the rents are relative to what we're actually getting in the neighborhood on our buildings. Then we look at how many unit upgrades we think we can do, how many washer dryers we can do. So you can see this deal. This is a particularly good deal. We have $8 million of equity required, and it's got almost $11 million of equity growth just by driving those three same things that we do on every deal. So we target 2 to 7% cash flow, and this one is a little lower in the first year because it's going to take some work changing over some tenants. Up to 100% of the capital is returned in 4 years, our standard model, 50% at the end of year 2, 75 at the end of year 3, and 100% at the end of year 4. And we target an annualized return of 18 to 19%. So the simple thing is that you guys don't see all the ones that don't meet these, and because if they don't meet them, unless there's something really special about it that we might look at a different way of doing, if they don't meet these, we just don't do them. We don't buy the deal. We just keep working on it until we can get it to the fact. And these three are really the standard that we drive to on every building. So at the end of today, we're going to have a cocktail reception in the court here. And I thought of this because I thought we must have a couple millennials here. Having people over to stare at their phones later if you want.